Welcome to the Accounting Profits and Prosperity Show. I am your host, Louis Prosperi. I am very excited to have Sharrin Fuller with us today. She is currently running Blueprint Financial, Fit CFO, and Glass Wallet Ventures. Sharrin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
One of the things that I'd like to do, start off right off the bat, is start with the history. I think there's a firm that you used to run, now that you've sold it, called Simple Office Solutions. And one of the things that was really intriguing when I looked into this was that it looked like it started off as a normal accounting or bookkeeping firm, but then you converted it into what we normally know now as fractional controller service base. Tell us a little bit about that history and how you went through that.
Yeah, absolutely. When I started a Simple Office Solution, I was a operational manager at a cold storage facility, and I did pretty much everything there. Operational manager really doesn't encompass. The owner was a 85-year-old man, not involved, and he came in one day and said, "Guess what? I'm selling this place." This was huge acres. I don't know if you know what cold storage is. It's where trucks come in, like it's where you store your ice cream, or it's storage units, but for freezers and refrigeration. And in there, we also had a bunch of units, of rental units and office space. And when they found out they were selling it, everyone asked me, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." And with working with all these people, they said, "Well, I wish I could hire you, but I only need somebody maybe 5 hours a week." And after about 8 of these people said that, I thought, well, dang, that's a full-time job. I'm going to start something. So I thought, what am I good at? And I decided it's going to be office management and bookkeeping. That's what I'm going to, because I wasn't really where I am now. I couldn't look at a tax return and tell you much at the time. So I started a Simple Office Solution, chose the name because it had the letter A. And when you Google accounting or bookkeeping, it comes up first. So that was my smartness came in right there. But what I essentially did is I lived in San Diego at the time. I was in my 20s and I didn't want to be stuck to a desk anymore. I wanted to be able to work from a beach or have freedom. So what I did is I would go to these people's offices once a week, usually on Monday. I would pick up everything in a shoebox or a box that they would have. I'd pick it all up. I'd take it back to my house and I'd scan it and I'd save it on I had a little zip drive that I'd take back and forth to put to their computer. A lot of their computers I access via logmein.com. I know that's dating me a little bit. So I basically managed their books, did all of their admin, their filing, all of that stuff remotely back in 2006 when remote was not a thing.
You're absolutely right. Not a thing in 2006.
Not at all.
Absolutely.
And it was basically because I was, 25, wanted to stay out late and be able to wake up at 11 a.m. and, work from my computer in bed. And then over the course of time, I started picking up bigger clients. Everything was word of mouth referrals. I started working with tax accountants and tax attorneys and had an amazing company I worked with. He was a CPA in Australia and in the US, and he owned a bunch of franchises, picked up a ton from him. And then I just realized I'm really good at this. And I was working alongside these CPAs and these tax attorneys, and nobody knew that I wasn't a CPA. Nobody knew that I did not go to college for this. I have 0 schooling. I just kind of picked it up and learned on my own. And I was working alongside them. And then I ended up in the VC world, and that is where my passion lied. And from there, I realized there's a whole other world of people that need help in these VC-backed startups, and that's where really the fractional controller, fractional CFO, or full back-end office management financial platform became, and that's what a Simple Office Solution ended up evolving to, with about 15 employees, and I want to say we had about 120 clients, whereas 20 of them were very large clients. The other ones were smaller, more relationship. But the 20 were heavy, large, VC-backed, typically SaaS companies.
Wow. I love the story because my background is a business strategist, and I've been in the professional world for a while. And what I loved about the fact is you took a traditional, what I call a traditional firm, which is whether it's an accounting firm or a bookkeeping firm, they do traditional services, which is where you started, which was nice. I'm impressed that back in 2006, you already had the concept of virtual and wanting to work off-site. So kudos to you. You're one of the leaders there, because I know back then virtual office didn't really exist. I know that from my background.
No, QuickBooks Online was not a thing. There was no Xero. You had to log in remotely to somebody's computer and access their QuickBooks desktop. Or
Yeah.
MYOB was another one for any of the Mac users out there, if that dates me as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So let's talk a little bit about the transformation because let's be honest, right? The traditional services were more core, but when we talk about fractional controller services, this is where we get into the advisory world
Yes.
more. This is where advisory really exists, to be honest.
Yeah.
So how would a traditional service firm start what do they have to put in place to not just talk about doing it, but actually having the structure, the framework to really go in there? Like, what are the things that they should do before they say, let's go into fractional controllership, right? Because you could say that and start trying to do it, but if you haven't put things in place,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
going to fail, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So to me, the biggest thing is understanding what your passions are. There are a lot of people that could have the opportunity to advise and to be fractional controllers or fractional CFOs, but they may
Sure.
not want to. There are a lot of people out there that want to go in, do the job at hand and walk away and say, I don't want to deal with that. But then there's those of us that say, why? Why are you doing it like this? This makes no sense. Those are the ones of us that can identify solutions and see the big picture. If you are one of those people, or you even have people on your team, I think the number one thing to do is identify the passions, identify what you have already on your team, and then put a process into it. So if you've got someone, for example, we have someone on one of our teams who is just amazing at HR, back end. So we created a whole HR department, and now she is. Whereas our accountants, they know it, they know what needs to be there, but their passion's not there. So now she's able to go to the accountants and say, who has payroll? Who has employees? Okay, I'm going to reach out and have a conversation with them, hear them, communicate, understand what their needs are, and identify those needs. And then from there, we're able to say, okay, now let's create this process and procedure. I feel like with advisory and process, a little bit is what I call the fake it till you make it. You kind of got to get in, get your feet wet, understand what you have and what's out there to create the process, create the flow, and then you can start replicating it. And that's kind of with any product or situation, right? You kind of have to test the waters and then fine tune it and then get what you have. But as long as you communicate with your clients, you should be able to identify what their needs are.
So if I got this straight, Sharon, passion first, right?
To me, that's everything.
Right. So if you want to do any type of advisory services, let's just start with just advisory and standard services. Mm-hmm. If you aren't passionate about it like the owner and you don't want to do it and you have nobody on your team doing it, then either hire someone who has the passion first before doing it. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
check your team. Does that make sense? Is that a good start?
My dad always said to me, and I don't like giving him props in life, because our parents were right. But my dad always said to me, if you're going to do something, do it right, and do it right the first time. And I, elaborate that on is I don't care what your job is. I don't care if your job is a full-time gum scraper offer. Be the best gum scraper offer in the world, right? Don't half anything. So, especially when it comes to advisory, people are coming to you for advice and they're trusting you. And if you're like, don't do it. Get out of there. Let someone who is passionate about it do it.
So number one is if you're an owner of a firm, and by the way, what owners tend to do is they want to go into a certain line. Like I've been in firms where they say this is our core, but we now want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
And then what you said perfectly, you found this HR person who loves it. You built the whole team around her, right? Then you build from there, and then the processes come after. It sounds basic, but it's not. It's actually the recipe for success. So thank you for that. Now, here's the other part. When we talk about advisory services, I think there's two parts, and this is something that we have. One is strategy, right? Business strategy or strategy in general, advisories. And then there's the implementation phase.
Yes.
Because those are different, right? I mean, at the end of the day, and describe to our audience, because what they have to understand is when they're consulting is one thing, which might be on the business strategy side, but implementation is completely different. Can you explain to our audience what's what and how they interact?
One is teaching, the other one's actually doing, right? One is saying, hey, you should do this, do as I say. And the other one is, okay, now do as I do. Let me put this in place. A lot of people are amazing at identifying what needs to be done, but maybe not great at getting on the back end and making it happen. I love both of them. I love identifying, and my favorite thing in my team will tell you is creating. Whenever we have something new, I always say to them, what's the process? What's the template? Because I want to see the template that's going to go in. So if somebody says to me, hey, Sharrin, we want X, I'm going to say great, and we're going to put it into our project management tool, and we're going to upload the template because there's the steps, there's how often it repeats, there's who it's assigned to and what is done. So writing down the steps and the process is definitely the implementation. And when you go to do it, like I tell people, I'm like, you already have, a lot of people that do this, they already have implementation, they already have process. The problem is it's not documented. As you're doing it, just write it out, document it out, and then you don't ever have to think about it again, and then you can replicate it. Like I said, I love that piece, and I have people even on my team that don't love that piece, and I help them with it because, as you can tell, I love it. It's my favorite. The process and procedure. If I could just sit in it all day, if it paid well, I would, but I'd probably get bored, to be honest.
You're running 3 companies right now. I could see doing one thing for you, Sharrin, wouldn't be enough, right?
No, I'd be bored.
However, I'd like to do a deeper dive on this, because when we talk about advisory and implementation, in your experience, you've realized that people are willing to pay more money for this service if you have the right customer. When it comes to the two, is implementation a higher premium level? And how does that work? Because do you have to take ownership and deliver success? Like, explain to our
Yes.
audience a little bit more about pricing it, as well as how far do you go depending on the two?
So it's really funny. I think when it comes to clients, they value the advisory more than they value the implementation, right? They look, you're a trusted advisor and you're telling them what to do. And then they're like, great, now how? And then the person in the background doing it, they're like, okay, so just make it happen. And some clients will have someone internally that'll do it for them. Others don't. And yes, when you take on that implementation, you're taking on the liability. You're taking on the from start to finish. Let's see it through. Does everybody know? Is there a process? For example, let's say I see that there is a client that they have 15 employees, and all their employees are just submitting some Excel spreadsheet randomly to get reimbursed for things. And I'm going to say to them, this isn't scalable. You can't do this. So let's set up a process. Let's put you on an expense software. Let's set up rules. Let's set up procedure. And then let's, implement that, document it, send it to the employees and say, this starts now. This is how it is. Do we all understand? Anyhow. So they care more about the idea and what the new process is going to be than they really do about how it happens, right? Nobody wants to know how the hamburger was made. They just want to order and eat the hamburger. And that is not putting down anybody that does the process, because like I said, I love process and it's almost more important, but it's just not regarded as highly, in my opinion.
No, well, let's put it this way. When I buy a car, or I purchase a car, or whatever I do, I enjoy the end product immensely, but the interest in how the engine works.
Just make it work, man.
Yeah,
And when it's broke, somebody better be able to fix it. I paid a lot of money. And that's the same concept, the same mentality is, I don't care, just make it happen.
So let's talk a little bit about pricing, because we've talked about how the advisory, but what happens with professionals is maybe they could do the work, maybe they can do the implementation, but when it comes to advisory work, it's very soft. So how do you price up? Like, where do you start with pricing and advisory implementation? Is it based on outcomes? Is it a percentage? How do you determine to kind of value that?
There are so many different models right now. I hear a lot of people in my industry, they're doing relationship based. They say, this is my client and I just charge them X and I do everything for them. I understand that model, but at the same time, to me, I don't know how scalable that is. That's more of a, hey, I'm just me and one other person and I'm able to handle, 10 relationship clients and this is my price and it's what I do. In a firm like ours, we're scaling. One of them we're scaling to sell, the other one we're just boutique scaling. So I can't do relationship pricing. I need to do SOWs, which is statement of work, and understand or the scope of work and understand what is owed. So with advisory, what we do is we have it as a package, right? So we've got different package deals, and essentially what it is, how often do you want the calls? What is your goal? What level? Are you looking more of just a real financial level and the operations of the company? I'm going to put you at the controller. Are you looking for higher level? Like, let's look at forecasting where the future of the company is. Then I'm going to put you with more of a CFO level in that advisory. Is it more tax? So we really try to identify what the needs are of the client, and then how often the needs are, and then we put that into their monthly recurring package. If somebody wants it one off, we usually just throw a one-off charge. We usually don't always. We'll usually do a one-time, hey, let's have a call, a consultation, and then decide what you need from there. We don't want to nickel and dime our clients, but we do want to understand what they need and what that is. And for us, that is where we come up with the monthly fee and what our scope of work is.
The terminology that popped into my mind is menu-based pricing.
Yes.
Right. And it sounds like you have menu-based pricing with a minimum price point, and then it's customizable based on the value. So
absolutely,
our basic menu in these categories, and then we'll do I'm a value pricer, so you're going to hear some value terms from me, Sharrin. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have the value conversation, and then you're going to then do it from there. So, okay, that's a good step. So basically what you're doing is you're pricing the customer, right? That's what you're basically doing here compared to pricing the relationship. And I know that's a new thing coming out.
It is. It is. And like I said, it's different models for different businesses. And our last company used to be more relationship. Our simple office solution was more relationship and, value based. In this one, it won't scale with what we're trying to do and how quickly we're doing it. We tried it for the first year, and then we said, hold on, this didn't work. Let's fix this. So now we went into more of a scope of work and menu. Now Glass Wallet's different.
So Sharrin, when it comes to advisory services, in your opinion, is that probably rather than tracking timesheets and tracking time and how much input times, this approach is probably the best approach? Because when you're trying to track inputs based on what we call soft services, I'm calling advisory and implementation, it's hard to monitor. When you do a tax return, it's a tax return. When you do reconciliations, it's a reconciliation. It's pretty solid, right?
Yes. So advisory is not.
So you basically saying abandon the timesheet, abandon the inputs, focus on the value component and price it based on a minimum component. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I guess I kind of went back and forth on that. So our general accounting, tax, HR services are menu. Advisory, it's a generalized, hey, this is what we're going to do, and we don't track time on it, because there will be some clients that are very, very needy for 1 month, and then you won't hear from them for another month or two, and that's okay. What's important is that they feel they have that relationship with us and that it's a two-way street. And I think when the advisory is added, it keeps them around a little bit longer, because those relationships are what keep your clients in the door, right? If it's just my menu, no relationship, they can go anywhere at any point. They could leave me for pilot at any point in time. But when they know I can pick up the phone and talk to Sharrin, I can pick up the phone and talk to my controller, I'm going to ask them a question, that is what they're sticking around for.
You call that the sticky part, right? That's the sticky part, right, of the relationship. Yeah. So here's to the audience out there. Sharrin saying if you're a timesheet person and a firm is based on timesheets, you're going to have difficulty in the advisory and strategy world. Is that correct? You have to.
Yeah, I mean, you can still log it, but I mean, most of the people are still logging, so they want to see where their time spent, but it's not something that I would babysit. It's not something I'd be like, oh, you spent too much time talking to this client. No, the whole idea of talking to them is to grow the services and grow the relationship and keep them there long term. So I definitely don't manage that. I don't micromanage that piece at all.
No, I'm just saying that we're looking at a person who's done it successfully over and over and doesn't manage time. I just think that our audience has to do the Sharrin mind shift. That's what I'm saying, right? They have
Good luck. This is a crazy mind over here, I'm telling you.
They have to do the mind shift. Let's talk about some other favorite topics of mine. And one of them was the human capital optimization strategy that you've mentioned. And what was really cool about that is you talked more about, I think, the risk factor. Like, how does your team is a critical component. And if you don't properly, when you mean optimization, you don't just mean skill set, you mean how they interact with your customers, the relationship, the environment, the culture environment, right? Go into that a little bit, because I don't think firms spend a lot of time outside of the technical expertise of their team to focus on those other things, which I agree with you 100% when I saw that. That's one of the things that I always look into when I have to go in and do an assessment. The first thing I look at is the internal team and how it works.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of people think that, team is no big deal. Well, that is so not true, especially when you're in anything that is client facing, service facing, your team is everything. A number one way to lose a client is turnover on your internal team because they built those relationships. And when somebody they built the relationship with goes away, they now know that they have to rebuild another relationship, and that's exhausting. So your team is number one. And I will always say my team is number one. So I take care of them first. And in finding them, of course, you want somebody who knows the basics, right? But the system and the process, if it's documented, you can teach that if they have the want and the desire. We've had employees in the past that were not great accountants, but they were amazing communicators. The clients loved them. And we were able, being that we were all good accountants, we were able to audit their work and teach them and grow them as an accountant and grow their understanding of the work we're doing. And that's the teachable part, right? We can teach that. I can teach you 1 + 1 = 2, but I can't teach you to care about what you're doing. I can't make you care about what you're doing. I can't teach you to be able to be a people person and talk to somebody on the phone and have them not want to hang up on you. I can't teach you that. That's embedded. So those are characteristics that are really important to me is, can you hold a conversation? Do you want to? Do you want to be here? Is this a job or is this a career? And there's nothing wrong with either. As long as when you're a part of the team, you're a part of the team. And on both sides, that's how it is we're a well-oiled team, and we function together. And if somebody is out, everybody else comes together to cover for that person. And that's so important. Nobody is standalone. Nobody is on their own. I think what happens is in accounting firms, especially because, accounting's been around for a long time and we are very cut and dry, black and white. We're just getting into this advisory, this gray, you don't bill by the hourly. And for older school accountants, and that could even be me, I've been around for a while too, we have a hard time in that gray, right? That gray's hard. 1 + 1 = 2. That is it. The tax return, it equals here. And we really get into that. Go to work, do your job, do your math, go home, go away. And it's not like that anymore. It really isn't. Social media changed everything. Access to our thoughts and opinions, the push of a button has really changed the world. Some people say COVID. I think it's just social media. And during COVID, we were all on social media. It's how we communicated. So yes, so your team is absolutely everything. Take care of them first, hire right, and grow them, make them feel appreciated, and you're going to have a successful business.
So here's the accountant or the bookkeeper in me, because we love data and we love to tick off checklists and boxes and stuff, right? And when you're talking about your team and the way and the things that you want, qualities, they're not trackable by a checkbox. How do you allow the professional accountant and bookkeeper, what metrics should they incorporate, for one, to sort of entice these type of people into their firm, and secondly, so that they can be rewarded? What things do you use as a way to facilitate that?
Well, we're 100% remote, so we attract absolutely everybody. I've never paid for a job advertisement. I put something out there and I'll get 500 responses in 2 days, and I'm like, no, just because you can, right? So that's first and foremost. And then honestly, I'm really good with people, thankfully. As you can see, I'm very introverted and to myself. So when I'm usually the last. That at all. Yeah. I'm usually the last conversation that I have with somebody, and I really try to have that more one-on-one. Let me get a feel for you. Let me just talk to you like a person. And I think right there that builds up. It really helps me understand who they are and gives them a good feeling of who I am. So one thing I've noticed, regardless of who the employee is and what motivates them, what they do want is structure. What they do want to see is not chaos or we don't know. They want to know, especially in the accounting world, what are the rules? What can we do? Even if the rule is there is no rule, they want to see it written, right? They want to know that. And so that structure is super important. And the motivation is different for everybody. I've had employees in the past that are completely motivated by money. Give them an extra $100, give them $500, they'll work the entire weekend, which is terrible. I don't want to do that, but they would. And I have employees that are absolutely in zero way motivated by money. If you give them more money, they're like, no, I can't be bought. What I want to know is what we're doing this for, what the outcome is, and what's the reason, right? They want that feeling, that gratification, and the accomplishment. Are you setting me up for failure? So knowing you've got to have a little bit of both, right? Because you can't say you get bonuses and you get pats on the backs and golden stars. It has to be a little bit of both. So KPIs are super important because it's trackable. And we do it by the company and then by teams and then by individual, because it really allows us to say, okay, here's the goal of the company, here's the goal of the team, and then here's some goals for you individually. And we let the individuals kind of pick how they want to be tracked. So that kind of gives us something to measure against each individual that they've chosen. And it seems to be working because, like I said, what works for one doesn't work for the other.
Okay, well, that last part really caught my attention. The individual can pick their KPIs. So
As long as it's in line of something, of their job.
Yeah,
They're like, I went to work every day. Yay.
yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I'm just saying that. So what you're saying is that within their purview of their job, they don't have to. They could pick if there's 10, let's say, they could pick maybe 5 out of the 10, right? That they like, and then you focus on those 5 and make sure they hit those 5, so that hopefully throughout the team, eventually all 10 get done, but different.
Yes.
I got to be honest, I've never heard of that, and I love that idea.
Really?
And same with teams. Yeah.
It's just like if you put a KPI on someone and they're already doing it and they're amazing at it, what's the point, right? I mean, we want to be able to have goals and performance indicators to show you, where things that need to be hit. And like I said, certain employees are like, oh, I struggle, so I want to put this in. And of course, like I said, we'll make some adjustments, but so far by doing this, no one picked anything that I wouldn't have picked for them, which was really quite interesting to me. But I also have a very, very dedicated, passionate team. So, which took some vetting.
Yeah, so let's be honest. Getting your A team takes quite a time. It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
You don't put an ad out and
you gotta kiss a few frogs, right?
Right. You hire.
Sorry, frogs, if you're watching, you know who you are.
Right? They don't turn into princesses or princes, I guess is what you're trying to say, right?
No, they all do not.
So I get that. So it's trial and error, and also getting the right team, and then that takes time. I love that, but I love the KPI determination where you have a series of KPIs, and then each team member, and also each team, if you have multiple teams, could pick and choose so that they're accountable. And once we say this all the time, right? When they pick their stuff and it's not forced on them, the attitude changes directly.
And they feel good about it. You're not setting them up for failure. You're not comparing them to somebody else that they're not. You're not comparing them to a level that they're not. You're really allowing them to grow. And when they're hitting everything 100%, they're feeling amazing. And then typically they're like, when you change it up, they throw something else in there because you just have people that want to succeed and they want those numbers up. And like I said, nobody's picking anything that's just ridiculous. They're all within means. So
So let's continue on the staffing, and here's one that caught my attention. By the way, that nugget alone, if you're listening out there, the KPI individual thing, that's brilliant. If you think that I've never heard of it before, and I'm going to start actually incorporating it in things that I do. So
awesome.
Brilliant.
Yay, trademark.
Brilliant, Sharrin. Now let's talk about automation a little bit, because automation, AI, and all that, it's part of our business now. It's part of the model. And when you talk to everybody, when they look at efficiencies, effectiveness, the first thing they do is go into automation. But one of the things you indicated is if automation is done incorrectly, you're just replacing you could add automation and increase your staff size because the automation did not work, right? So explain that a little bit, because people think once they automate, everything gets better. It's like that panacea world, right? And you've been there because the virtual environment requires more of that than anywhere else. So please let us know what you think on that and how that works.
There's some amazing software out there right now. And what we're really automating is anything that we do that we're like, why am I doing this? This is so manual. There's got to be something for it. There's got to be a Zap. There's got to be something. One thing that we're trying to automate at the moment is for all of our clients on the Fit CFO side, most of them all use Stripe. Even though we report all of our clients on a cash basis, we still do their payroll journal entries, which are automated. automated, and we still do the end of month journal entry to allocate the merchant fees out of the revenue, right? Because otherwise I know it nets, but we don't like it. Well, we don't want to make that journal entry. If it's 15 minutes of journal entry times 200 clients, that's a lot of time. So we are now automating that. But the issue is finding what works, making sure that it works across the board, because if we go and we implement something, and when you implement, it's not like pushing a button. You have to get in, you have to sync, you have to set everybody up, you have to make sure chart of accounts are there. It's not simple. You need somebody on the back end. There's usually always a good 8 to 40 hours of implementation time and that's if you do it correctly. If you don't do it correctly, you're in even more trouble. And then once it's implemented, then there has to be a process. Okay, so we've got, that piece right now that we're automating. And when we do that, that's going to free up the time of the team by, I think, 40 hours a month, which will then allow them to do other things or allow us to take on more clients, right?
Sure.
And that's a lot of the teams get really worried. They're like, we're bringing in this software, it's replacing my job. I'm like, no, it's not in any way. You're not going anywhere. We're replacing this piece of your job so we can give you other things, hopefully advisory or something that's human billable. So identifying these automated pieces are very important, but don't be impulsive. I was impulsive on a few things just recently, and we set everything up and we got in and we're like, oh my God, this doesn't work. And so we are now switched over to a new system, which took us 2 more weeks to get going. And now we're moving everybody over to the new system. And let me tell you what, it's been a process, and it's been my time because I'm the one that was impulsive and said, let's do this, team. This is what we're doing. We're doing it right now. And it's not fair to me to go to the team and go, hey, remember that impulsive decision I made that was terrible? Now I've made another decision and I'm moving us over, and you've got to stop everything you're doing and work late to fix it. So I'm trying to handle a lot of it because I don't think it's fair to them, which now has made me sick because I'm working 20 hours a day, but it's my fault. It's my fault. So you can put yourself in crazy binds and make things even worse than what they were. So being impulsive when bringing in automation is like the dumbest thing. And I have ADHD, if you haven't noticed, like crazy, and I am extremely impulsive. So I am trying to work on that, but sometimes I do things and as soon as I do it, I'm like, oh, that was stupid. It was a really bad idea. I'm going to be fixing that in a week, and lo and behold, I'm fixing it in a week. So
Well, Sharrin, to be quite honest, my history is I learn more from my mistakes than my successes every time, right? So
that's why I'm so wise. I'm just a body of mistakes.
Right?
Everyone's like, how'd you learn this? I'm like, I screwed it up 5 times in the past. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the wisest people probably have made the most mistakes.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, right?
100%. I always tell people, before you go do that, ask me. I probably screwed it up in the past, and I can tell you how to not do it. My team's like, Sharrin, how do you know this? I'm like, I've been screwing it up longer than you. That's how I know. Yeah. So don't feel bad.
So if I understand correctly, automation becomes a value, not per customer, but when it goes right across the entire company. So if you're going to automate, make sure it's an automation that impacts all parts of the function where that's the real value. So if you buy an automated function that only works on 2 customers, that's not where
you
you find
more time, right? Because now you got to stop and implement for 2 things. And honestly, what does that take? Like, I look at the time, it takes me 15 minutes a month for 2 clients is 30 minutes. Times a year is 6 hours. It's going to take me 15 hours to implement. I save nothing. Wait until I've got enough clients that it makes sense. Try to just and sometimes there's just a zap. Use a zap.
Okay,
Zapier is the key to the world right now.
So let's talk a little bit about Zap since you keep bringing it up. How has Zap influenced your business?
Oh my God, I love Zap. Zap should be sponsoring me. We use Slack, and I have this amazing workflow tool, right? My software workflow tool of how everything should read into everything and how it functions. And almost what we do is with Slack, that is our communication hub. Everything reads into there. If you have a calendar notice, a Zoom notification, something, our project management tool, somebody signed an agreement, there is a notice, just absolutely everything. So instead of having to go to monitor 6 different platforms, we've got Slack. And most everything that reads into Slack to give us that notice is set up with a Zap. And most Zaps, Zapier, ZAPIER.com, are free. And what it is Zap is connecting the back end, the API of one software platform to another open end software platform. And so depending how open the back end of a software's API is, depends on what you can do. There are some amazing softwares that don't have an an open API yet, but they're working on it. Me and my team have auto emails once a week. We're like, hey, that way it auto sends, because I always feel like he who yells loudest gets taken care of first. So we just, nag them real bad. But if you can connect your software, like I said, anytime you log in and you're doing something manually, anytime you have to stop and go somewhere else to look for something, you're wasting time. Add that time up. Try to get it all into one specific hub to where it rings in. Another example is all of our company phones now, we moved them all to open phone. Open phone reads into a Slack channel. So anytime a client texts, calls, you can click right there in Slack. It tells us, we can read it, but whoever on the team has visibility, so we have that scalability of the, with the visibility, and they can click, they can respond, it opens into the app, but they don't have to stop and go look, stop and go open. It's in this one place that they need to be at.
Well, I personally think we could do a whole session just on the tech stuff you just talked about.
Probably.
Right? Because that's amazing. And that's something that I think is becoming more critical in our industry now, which is integrating all of our apps, all of our things into a hub. And I guess we also have to choose wisely. Well, thank you so much, Sharrin. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
And I've enjoyed having you on air. Sharrin, it was really great, all the information that you gave us. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of tidbits that we have that I'm definitely going to take it hard. I'm going to probably incorporate it in a lot of the stuff that I'm doing. So thank you very much for sharing all that great content. Now, Sharrin, if someone wants to get a hold of you or learn more about you and what you're doing, can you let them know how to get a hold of you?
Yes, absolutely. You can go to my website. It's glasswalletventures with an S.com. And on April 1st, we're actually launching my community. And in my community, we will be teaching you how to do everything that I do. We'll have webinars, we'll have information from the tech stack that I use, courses, all sorts of things. I'm also launching courses, and I'm going to be giving you step by step of how to really run a business from start to finish. And my program is from scalable to saleable.
That's fantastic. Well, that's the end of our show. Sharrin, thanks for being on the show, and thank you out there for spending the time with us, for watching this fantastic episode. If you like the content, please subscribe. Until next time, have a great week, stay hydrated, and be well. Bye for now.